Welcome to Talking Voiceovers, where we interview professionals of the voiceover industry in South Africa. With me, your host, Gail Goslin. Today we'll be talking to Chris Voysey, professional speaker and presentation coach.
Thanks, Gail. Nice to be with you and to see you again.
So let's get straight to it. You started out in theatre. Tell us your journey from there to being a keynote speaker.
Okay, well, my sort of dream was to be an actor. And so I was in the theatre for a while. I actually qualified as a speech and drama teacher. I went to university and did a degree in English as well. I've got a BA English from Natal University, KZN. And then I met a young lady and we got married, and I realized that the theatre probably would not support us for what we wanted to do. So I moved out of the theatre into advertising, which was a similarly creative, unusual, lots of crazy people. I kind of like having crazy people around me. So this was a lot of crazy people around. And I was in advertising for some years and then moved into marketing. I was headhunted by a large health company to start an advertising, promotions, training, communications sort of department within the company. And I did that, joined them, and spent about 16, 17 years with them, traveled all over the world, and in fact ended up in Australia running that company in Australia. So I was there for about 3 years and then got homesick and came home. And then, so when I got back, which is about 11 years ago now, I found I was really tired of the corporate environment. I had in fact gone through a divorce. I was on my own. And I thought, well, this is the time to really do what I enjoy doing. So it's quite strange because my life has almost gone in a kind of a full circle because I'm back now in that voice and performance area. I'm not really acting, although I've done a couple of very small little local film roles and bits and pieces. But what I did was develop a training consultancy in the area of voice and presentation skills and how we come across on a stage. And of course, more recently, how we come across in this environment, in the virtual situation where we're all staring at cameras as I am right now, or staring at you as I am right now. Depends where your eyes go. So that's the field I'm in now. I do quite a lot of voice coaching where I help people develop their voices. I help them correct any situations with their voice which could be hindering their communication, particularly in a presentation setup. In other words, standing in front of an audience or standing in front of a camera as I am doing right now.
You wrote a very interesting article about how a person's accent can affect communication, especially here in South Africa, where there are so many accents. How do you reconcile embracing the many beautiful South African accents with the world of advertising and communication?
Well, I think that accent and language is a really fascinating discussion, and it's something I've got into more and more. I found myself, again, fascinated by this concept of the English language spoken in so many different ways by so many different people. So here we live in South Africa using the English language as, the national language, so to say, whereas in fact, it's actually the language of a very, very small percentage of the population. So I think there are about 7 or 8% of us who are born English speaking. In other words, into an English speaking home, like myself and like you to some extent, although of course, obviously you're also French speaking. So there we have an interesting combination. But the thing in South Africa is we're all speaking English in the work sense, all over the place, we're all speaking English. And for most of us, it is not our home language. It is not our mother tongue. I went to Australia, which is to all intents and purposes an English country, an English speaking country. And of course, everyone speaks with this Australian real twang. Well, in fact, like with all accents in all countries, you get degrees of Australianness, if I could call it that, where some people speak with this really twangy Australian sort of twang. You all right, mate? The sentence goes up at the end of the tune goes up at the end of the sentence. We call that tune 2, whereas tune 1, you're speaking and your voice drops at the end of the sentence. That's tune 1. If your voice goes up at the end of the sentence, like the Aussies do, that is tune 2. And the Aussies use tune 2 all the time. So everything they say sounds like a question. And then, of course, there's that twang, sometimes much less, than in other cases, but nevertheless can undoubtedly lead to misunderstanding for people visiting an English-speaking country. As you know yourself from being in the voiceover and recording field, the whole situation of accent has changed so dramatically over the years. I mean, 30 years ago, 40 years ago on BBC, you wouldn't get a job as a news announcer or a presenter if you didn't speak what they call standard English or received pronunciation English. In other words, a certain kind of English which is sort of standard. In fact, the English that I was taught when I went to theatre school, I was taught to speak a kind of a so-called standard English. Today, of course, all the accents are in there, all the regional accents, and that's precisely what's happened in South Africa. In voiceover work, you hear many accents, South African accents of various kinds. I think it's wonderful to hear all these different accents, and I don't think it interferes with the message in any way at all, unless there's some level of misunderstanding. If words are pronounced wrong, if we can call it that, and we should be able to call it that, because in any language, there's a right and a wrong way to pronounce a word. So if words are pronounced wrong, or the accent is so strong that you can't really understand the English clearly, then it's a problem, as I see it.
We recently had a question from one of our members. Are there set ways to pronounce words within the South African context of voiceovers?
In the South African context, absolutely, words are pronounced a certain way. And I mean, I know I sound rather sort of bumptious or even pompous as I say that, but it's true of any language. I mean, you speak French, and you know as well as I do that French words are said in a French way. Now, in France, there might be a more rural accent or a more Parisian accent. I don't know. I don't know France that well. I've only ever been there once in my life.
There are, yeah.
But the reality is that French words are pronounced a certain way. English words are pronounced a certain way. I did a lot of work at some stage for an organization that was preparing young people for call centers. And in fact, it was an English call center. So it was really important that they spoke English with as standard an English accent as possible. One young man, this happened to be in Durban, one young man who was Zulu speaking said to me, when he went to school, his teacher, English teacher, said to him, don't worry about pronunciation, just learn the words and speak English. Well, I must say I disagree with that teacher. And I would say to that young Zulu man, take a word like sawubona, okay, sawubona, which is a national greeting in our country, whatever language you speak, but of course it comes from Zulu, Sawubona. Now, if I asked an English person to pronounce that word who had no knowledge of Zulu at all, had never even visited South Africa, how would they say that word? They're likely to say sawubona or sawubona. They're not going to say sawubona because they don't know how it's pronounced, but that is how you pronounce it. So it's the same with English. Amongst African language people, when I was doing quite a lot of what we call language and accent correction work, words like determine, Determine. Determine is pronounced determine. But a lot of young people say determine. Understandably, mine on the end of that word is pronounced mine. You talk about gold mine or a coal mine, it's mine, mine. But English is a most peculiar language, and there are not many rules that you can follow. There are some. So in the word determine, it's pronounced determine, not determine. One example.
But yeah, and that's what you were saying in your article as well, is that if you pronounce the words incorrectly, you don't communicate properly and your message doesn't come across. So it's important to get the basics right.
Exactly. With that example I've given of determine, you know, if you said that to a person who's not familiar with the fact that that has become a bit of a pronunciation in South Africa, I've found a lot of people, you would not know what that word is, determine. Well, determine sounds like detonate, determine. Do you detonate in the mine? You know, there are all sorts of components come in there which assist your confusion with that word. So it is essential that that word is pronounced the correct way that it should be pronounced in the English language. There are many others. If I may make a quick comment, there's a thing called the neutral vowel. So obviously in every language, there are vowels and consonants. The vowels are the open sounds, the consonants are the closed sounds like cat. So the k and the t are consonants and the a is the open sound, that's the vowel. We all know that. But there are not only 5 vowels, spoken vowels. There are 5 vowels, A, E, I, O, U, as we all learn at school, but there are 23 vowel sounds. So A is pronounced a, as in cat or apple. It's pronounced R, as in path or car. It's pronounced A, as in wade or rain. So there are different pronunciations of a letter, as it were. But there's one thing, it's called a neutral vowel. And this would help people enormously if they could get their head around the concept of the neutral vowel. That is a vowel sound that replaces another sound, and it's just a neutral sound. It's like, So for example, determine is determine, min. If you say cupboard, some people say cupboard. You know, there's a big cupboard full of clothes, cupboard. The B-O-A-R-D is an sound, cupboard. Focus. You will have people, there's a tendency to say focus because of the US, which is normally pronounced us. So it's understandable, but the word is not pronounced focus, it's pronounced focus, neutral vowel, us, cupboard, determine, All those sounds are neutral vowel sounds. Once you know about the neutral vowel, it's a lot easier to speak a kind of a flowing English.
Do you coach elocution or accent manipulation one-on-one or as workshops?
Yes, yeah, that's my job. I'm a voice coach, okay? So, and of course, I'm a trainer and a facilitator and a speaker on this topic of communication, or what I call the art and science of successful communication. Because we tend to think, well, communication, I open my mouth, that person opens their ear, and we've got it. Well, as we know, that's not how it happens, because so much happens between the open mouth and the open ear where it doesn't succeed. So I talk about the art and science of communication, because there's a lot to learn and there's a lot in the performance of communication that is very important. In my coaching role, I can be teaching people the sort of stuff we're talking about right now, or simply how to use your voice more effectively. You know, where are the ups and downs? Where's the inflection? Where's the stress? Where's the emphasis? Where do you talk loudly? And where do you possibly pull your voice back? Where do you pause? The power of pause, which is an extremely effective tool and technique in the spoken word, when in fact you're not saying anything. You stop, you wait, you go on to the next point. So the voice coaching has to do with how to speak English correctly, how to adapt your accent if you need to, how to present effectively, how to make an impact on an audience, how to give a speech. Because a lot of people, as you know, when they hear about public speaking, they go into a state of panic. And it's very normal. And in fact, most people suffer from glossophobia, as they call it, the fear of public speaking. So, you know, one can help people overcome that fear.
What is Gym for the Voice?
Gym for the Voice is something I invented a while ago, and I've run a lot of workshops on Gym for the Voice, and I'm still running them. Gym for the Voice is built on this premise. Your voice is a physical instrument. It's part of the physical body. And as a result of that, it improves and can be helped by physical exercise in the same way as you go to gym. You know, if you want to lose weight or tone up, or, you know, as you're getting older like me, you go and do a few exercises just to try and keep more alive. That's what gym is about. You know that you've got to use the human body to make it keep working. If you just sit on the couch all day, your muscles will atrophy and you will not be able to move eventually. They'd have to pick you up. The voice is similar. We just, you know, we take these voices for granted. We just open our mouths and start speaking, particularly if you're a public speaker or a voiceover artist or a voice actor, whatever it might be. Your voice is critically important to what you do. And you can work with your voice and improve your voice through Gym for the Voice, which relates to the way you breathe, which is very important. It relates to the way you use the speech organs, which is very important. And it relates to how you can have all those things working better for you so that you speak better. That's in a nutshell, Gail.
So that helps with pronunciation as well as communicating with body language and also warming up your voice muscle.
It's a really important one, that last one. I cannot imagine a voiceover artist or an actor or an actress going into a performance situation without warming up their voices. Makes no sense to me at all. It's like someone going to run the Comrades Marathon and doing no practice, no warming up, no exercises in preparation for that daunting task. Your body cannot be just thrown into that kind of activity and action. You need to warm up. The importance of breathing really deeply, what they call diaphragmatic breathing. So if I might just push this down here a little bit, if your lungs are here, your diaphragm is sitting there at the bottom of your lungs. As you breathe in, it's dome-shaped. That diaphragm actually flattens out, giving more space for more breath. How amazing is the human body? So, we tend to do this kind of little, if I say to a class, okay, guys, deep breath. Everyone does this. Everyone pulls their shoulders up. What on earth for? You haven't got any lungs in your shoulders. So the important thing actually is to pull the breath in down here. So again, you would pull the breath in, something like this. Fill here, and then slowly let that breath out. I would recommend, in fact, that you take as long as you can to release that outgoing breath. So you pull the breath in and you release it as slowly as possible, like that. And so you do it on an S or an F sound, and you release it as slowly as you can before you take the next breath. A voiceover person should be doing that every day of their lives. You should wake up in the morning, do some stress releasing exercises, particularly around this area, because the voice is right there. The vocal zone is sitting in the middle of the stress zone. We carry stress in our shoulders, in our neck, in our jaw, to some extent, so that you get people who speak like this, don't even open their jaw. You don't know where the sounds are coming from. So the jaw has to be dropped. This area needs to be released. So do some releasing exercises, put on a piece of music, dance around your room, and let your body just get flexible and relax. Then stand still, or I'm sitting right now, sit in a position and get your posture right, pull that air in and slowly let it out. So I would say that a few minutes of those exercises every morning should be what voiceover and voice actor people are doing. That's what they should be doing. Then, of course, you've got the speech organs. The jaw, as I pointed out earlier, needs to be as flexible as possible. So I know this looks ridiculous, but it's meant to, because you're meant to actually stretch and release all this here. The speech organs are your jaw, your lips, your teeth, your tongue, the soft palate. All of these make the words, create the words. They need to be working as effectively as possible. That's why in Gym for the Voice, there would also be a time we would focus on just relaxing the speech organs, and then repeat, tongue twisters that your mother taught you in any language, actually, when you were young. So something like red lorry, yellow lorry, red lorry, yellow lorry, red lorry, yellow lorry, red lorry, yellow lorry, as you can see, is moving and extending these speech organs. And you repeat it, getting faster and faster until you start tripping over your own words. Then you start again. And the more you do that, the more you are able to do it. So I always say to people, do these exercises in your car. You're not doing anything else anyway. So, just experiment with the voice, play around with the voice, play around with a scale, for example, humming. You're just playing around with your voice as you're driving your car. People at a traffic light will think you're mad. So what? Who cares?
We most probably are all mad anyway in the creative world, so
Precisely.
That's good. You speak about personal branding. Can a voiceover artist have a brand?
Well, a person is a brand. You do have a brand. Everyone has some kind of a brand in relation to the way people see us. One might dress a certain way. And if I might take you as an example, Gail, you usually wear overlays like you've got on today, you usually wear these big scarves. Very often your hair is a most interesting color. Yeah, so the point is that you have quite a strong, quite a French, I suppose French, obviously, young, slightly funky sort of brand, purely from the way you look. Then, of course, when you start speaking and expressing yourself, also you are putting across a brand, a brand that says, I like talking, I like being friendly with people. What do you do? This is what I do. I'm quite open to people, maybe a little bit eccentric. I don't know, whatever those things might be, they become part of your brand. And one has to be cautious of that, both cautious and just celebrate it. Celebrate who you are and what your brand is, but be aware of the fact that it has an impact on people. I'll give an example. When I got to Australia, which was in 2007, and I was there for 3 years, but just after I got there, I visited a cousin who was living in Brisbane. I happened to be in Brisbane. I hadn't seen him for many years. He had married an Australian girl, moved over there. We were chatting and he said to me, you could have some trouble in Australia. So I said, well, thanks a hell of a lot for that vote of confidence. I'd only just got here. So I said, why? He said, because you talk too posh. I said, what does that mean? He said, you sound too educated. You sound too English. You don't sound like a South African at all. And the Australians don't like people who sound too posh. And of course, Australia is a very egalitarian society, a very flat society. And I became very conscious of this. Of course, I'm not aware particularly of the way I speak. This is the way I speak as a result of quite a lot of theatre training, learning about the voice, learning about speech, which I did when I was studying to become a voice teacher. This is the way I speak. And yet I have to be aware that there might be a slightly pompous sound to my voice, which could actually put people off. So I need to be aware of that. And I think maybe I even started using a bit of an Australian accent after a while. I wasn't conscious of doing that, but my son spoke to me on the phone after I'd been there a year or so. And he said to me, Dad, do you have to sound like a flipping Australian? And of course, I was not aware, and he was being very rude there by saying a flipping Australian. But you do need to be aware of the kind of image that you're putting across. So maybe we replace the word brand with the word image. You are putting across a certain image. For example, body language, you mentioned it earlier. If I'm sitting like this in a conversation group, most of the time, watching the people talking, this sort of slightly disgruntled look on my face, I don't need to say a word for people not to assume that I'm a grumpy old bugger, simply because of the way I'm sitting. My body language, it's called language because it speaks volumes. So you need to be aware of your voice, how you're using your voice, how you dress, how you interact with people. Do you connect with people or do you tend to kind of like push them away slightly? All of this will definitely affect your brand. In terms of voiceover, I think it gets a little bit more technical in a way, because what sort of voice are you? Where do you want to place your voice abilities and what you have to offer? So if you've got one of those big, deep, rich African voices, I heard one the other day, I thought, wow, what a marvelous voice. If you've got that kind of voice, you're probably not going to read children's stories, although of course, you could be the monster in the children's story. But, you need to, it's like actors. Actors, no one wants to be typecast, but the type of person an actor is, the kind of voice that they naturally have, the kind of look they have. Are they tall and thin, short and chubby, short and thin, tall and fat? What are they? What do they look like? Will, to some extent, define what kind of role they're likely to get. All of this is what you need to be aware of. So a lot of it is about awareness. And many of us don't really want to be that aware of ourselves, but we need to be. You actually have to be aware of yourself in relation to your brand and what you're going to put across to other people. You are communicating a brand. Ensure that it's a positive brand, a brand that people want to get closer to, a brand that is warm towards other human beings. Does that make sense to you, Gail?
Absolutely, it does. Yeah. Is there any advice that you would give to somebody who's starting out in this whole universe of voice and communication?
Yes, I would want to go back to what I've just said about self-awareness. Be aware of your voice. Be aware of where your voice could, in fact, the way you're using it could hinder your communication as opposed to enhance or help your communication. So, do you speak very quickly, naturally? Are you a very, very fast speaker? Well, if that is the case, there's nothing wrong with speed as such because it does provide a very nice energy. Quick speakers are energized people very often, and that's fine. However, to what extent is the speed, the rate of your voice, your speech, actually hampering communication? So record yourself. Every single person has got a phone with a very good recorder on it. Record it, speak into it, read into it, create your own adverts, create your own scripts, read into your phone, play it back, play it to other people. Get a good, solid friend who's not afraid to tell things as they are, but is not there to criticize you. Let them give you some feedback. They could say, look, you're speaking too fast. I'm struggling to follow you because it's too fast. You need to hear what they're saying. In which case, if you're going into this field, become aware of your voice. Listen to it, get feedback from other people as to the way it comes across, experiment with it, read children's books, read other books, read poems, read things, use the voice more and more so that it's like playing the piano. I happen to be a pianist, and I started learning the piano when I was 6 years old. And I'm a hell of a lot older than that now. So I've been playing for a long time. And there's practice involved. You don't just sit down and play a piano. Well, very often you don't just sit down and knock off a voiceover. You might have a naturally a pleasant sounding voice. That's cool. But you need to be aware of its potential problem areas. Get advice. Listen to yourself. Get feedback. Go on training. The South African Voiceover Academy, Selwyn and Craig offer courses. I know there are a lot of people who run voices and who will record you and then play your voice back so that you can hear how you sound. Those courses are invaluable. I believe the course I offer, Gym for the Voice, or some personal coaching, will help you become more aware of your own voice and how you can use it more effectively. The short answer is, if you want to use your voice, get to know your voice, get to love your voice, get to experiment with your voice, get to play with your voice, experiment, read aloud, do things in the car. Always use the car. It's a wonderful recording studio. Use the car to experiment and play around with your voice.
I would agree. The voice is a muscle and it needs to be trained. Not just the voice,
Exactly.
but the mouth and everything. It's your tools.
The thing is, you're quite right. That's a good point, is the voice. We talk about the voice. Well, the voice is all sorts of things. It starts there. In fact, it starts here in the breathing, because that's the foundation. That's the cushion on which the voice sits. And the breath will give you more power in your voice, and it will help you deal with nervousness. By the way, nervousness, nothing wrong with being nervous, because it gives you a kind of an adrenaline. There was a wonderful story about Rudolf Nureyev, the Russian ballet dancer, one of the greatest ballet dancers of all time. And when he'd been dancing for some time, he was in a press conference, and a journalist, I think trying to be a bit clever dick, said to him, "So, do you still get nervous when you dance?" And his answer was very telling. He said, "If I did not get nervous before a performance, I would be worried." And I thought that was brilliant, because what he was saying was, he was leaping those extraordinary moves that ballet dancers do. And what he was saying was, the energy, the adrenaline in my body helps me do that. But of course, it's adrenaline that is contained and focused. So as they say, butterflies in the stomach, get them flying in the same direction, get them flying in formation, but they will still keep flying. So we talked about the voice. Starts with the breathing, is activated in the voice box, goes into the resonating chambers, which are around here, to get the tone and the sound, and then is expressed through the speech organs. So at least there are 4 and more, because you need to engage your brain as well before you speak. how you're going to say it, what do the words mean, where does the emphasis need to go, how can you play with these words to give them more impact. All of that is involved in voice.
Do you still get nervous before you speak?
Terrified. So sometimes I just feel very relaxed, a little bit like, I hope this goes well, because you're never sure how the audience is going to take to you. The audience is always different. Every audience is different, every group. Sometimes I'm sort of nervous and I'm not sure why. I'm saying to myself, you've done this so many times, and yet still there's a nervousness. But I use those exercises. I use the breathing as I'm driving to that event. And sometimes, of course, it's online now. I'm doing these exercises to kind of focus all that nervous energy into the voice so I can use it productively.
Wow, that is super interesting to know, because I'm sure a lot of people starting out in voiceover or any form of performance really would be nervous. And it's good to know that you, a veteran, if I may say it like that, still get nervous. It's really good to know. It helps. Where can people reach you?
They can go to my Facebook page. They can drop me a line on chris@chrisvoysey.com. And Voysey sounds quite like voice, so you don't need to forget it.
Well, thank you, Chris. That was an enormous amount of information. It's super interesting and lots of fun. Thanks for chatting with us.
Thank you very much, Gail. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to chatting again sometime.
That was Talking Voiceovers with me, Gail Goslin, and Chris Voysey. If you enjoyed this interview, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss the next one. See you next time.